before you ask, no, we're not going to be talking about a 1980s Jennifer Connelly movie today. I know you want to, I want to, and there are two that I really want to go into a lot of detail about, but I had my fun. Last video, I did an in-depth analysis of a 2008 made-for-TV Lifetime stalker movie that nobody had ever heard of or cared about. And now I need to do something tangentially related to something that's trending. I need to do something that is somewhat aligned with the pop culture zeitgeist so I can swim around in that sweet, sweet SEO. Okay? And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Game of Thrones. Why? Because House of the Dragon is coming out at the end of the week. And so people are talking about it. They're like, oh, Team Green or Team Black? What do you think about Rhaenyra? What do you think about Alicent? What about those dragons? I am going to refrain myself from getting too passionate this early in the video because I don't care about House of the Dragon. And this is not about House of the Dragon. This is about Game of Thrones and how it hurt me in my heart. And I'm finally ready to talk about it. So... Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Summer, and what we're going to do today is I'm going to set a little timer in just a few moments where, and I am going to, fresh off the dome, no script, right off the old noggin, that's a word for brain, I have had in my head and in my heart ever since maybe a month after Game of Thrones season 8 ended, a fully formed speech that is ready at all times to just come flooding out of me when given even the slightest provocation. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer and I'm just going to give you the speech. I'm just going to give you the speech fresh off the dome with as little edits as possible. And we're just going to talk about Game of Thrones. And that is tangentially related to something in the pop culture zeitgeist, and it's gonna, and that's what this video is gonna be about. So, quick disclaimer. I was recently almost laid low by the plague. It wasn't really the plague, it was a bad cold that quickly became a upper respiratory infection. I had a raging fever for 4 days, and I had to go to the doctor, and the doctor gave me antibiotics, and then the fever went away because it helped my lungs not be infected. Anyway, I still have a little bit of a cough left over. So, quickly to just sum up what we went over, would love to talk about obscure media because I find that delightful. Need to do something a little bit trending. Haven't seen House of the Dragon, so we're gonna have to talk about Game of Thrones. I will set a timer. You will get the speech that is always locked and loaded, lodged and ready in my head and my heart at all times about what Game of Thrones did to me, and then did to us all, actually. And then we're gonna have a nice time, and it's gonna not be a long video. It's not gonna be a long video because I'm gonna set a timer. And if I cough, please forgive me. All right, so I'm going to be generous with myself. I like to think that the speech is at least 15 minutes. It's probably longer. And so I'm going to give myself 20 minutes because we're going to be concise, and we're going to just say what we need to say, and then we're going to leave. Okay? So, timer. Ooh, somebody's grimy. You've been holding your phone. Some sort of little tiny toddler? Gross. How embarrassing. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. So, two of me. So we're going to set a timer for 20 minutes. Okay. And there we go. And let me just go back to, what was it? 2018. Let me just go back to who I was in 2018. All right. So my roommate Hannah and I didn't start watching Game of Thrones until after season 7 had already come out. We were hesitant because it just seemed like a really violent show with a lot of, sex, and that's exactly what it was. But we decided after watching that clip of Daenerys setting free the Unsullied with her dragons, after watching that 8 to 10 times, we're like, what if we just watched it? What if we just watched Game of Thrones? Who's gonna stop us? So we decided, okay, let's go ahead and watch Game of Thrones, and we were blown away. That watching seasons 1 through 7 was incredible. It was that no one can deny that those first few seasons are just absolutely fantastic television. And so when, we were in the middle of that big long break between season 7 and season 8, and we were like, okay, well, we hopped in at the right time. We're going to be able to watch season 8 with everybody else. This is going to be so exciting. And as time went nearer, we decided, let's go ahead and rewatch all of the episodes leading up to season 8 so that we're ready to go. That's what we did. Our friend Patrick would come and watch with us, and we just rewatched all of it, and it was very clear to see where the seasons were doing really well, which was when they had material to when they had actual material to adapt. And then it became very obvious when the adaptable material ran out, because I think I saw a picture once it was like a meme explaining the show, and it was like a beautifully half-drawn horse, and then the second half of it was just like a horrible children's sketch, and it was like a very clear line between seasons 1 through 5, seasons 6 and 7, and then season 8. So, anyway, season 8. It comes, it happens, it's what it is, and at first, it was seeming okay. Not as good as the early seasons, of course, but it was fine. It was fine. And then we get to the end. Here's my beef about the ending. I have no problem with Daenerys Targaryen turning into Mad Queen Dany. I'm okay with that. If that was George's vision from the beginning, then good for George. I wish that that's what could have happened, but that's not what happened in the show. The books haven't happened yet, so he hasn't had time to lay that groundwork. But it didn't happen in the show. And here's my proof and my evidence about why it didn't happen in the show. For the entire series, for the whole series, Daenerys was shown as a hero. She was setting free slaves. She was going across the land trying to reclaim her throne, doing good along the way, and beloved by all, beloved by us as well. Not because she was, she was wicked like the Lannisters, or really cool and stabby like the most dynamic and delightful duo on earth, the Hound and Arya. No, it was because she was wonderful and she was super cool and she had cool dragons. And sometimes she had to be stern, but that's what a ruler has to do, okay? She has to make tough decisions, but she made them for the good of the people. And that's the thing. The Daenerys that they wrote in the show, all the way up to season 7, all the way through season 8, up until the moment she decides to light King's Landing on fire, is a hero. That is who they made her. That it was her arc, and that was what they were writing her as. They did not lay the groundwork for Mad Queen Dany. And anybody who's like, the biggest argument I hear there are two things. One is the argument the show itself tried to make, which was episode 9, or whichever was the last 6. I don't even care. However many episodes there were left, there was the final episode, and in the final episode, there previously on Game of Thrones was 8 minutes of random clips of different people in Dany's life telling her not to turn out to be her dad, without a single solid scene of her acting anything like the Mad King. It was just a bunch of people saying, don't be like your father, don't be like the Mad King, don't be like your dad, don't be like the Mad King, don't go crazy, Dany. That was it. And you can't tell me that that's laying the groundwork. That's people suggesting something that's a good idea, but it's not laying the groundwork, because what did Dany do that was ever like her father? She was sane. She was just. She thought things through. She was a dynamic leader and a good warlord. And here I can hear the argument. What about those soldiers? What about those soldiers in the field that she burned? What about those soldiers in the field that she burned after she already captured them? Oh, you mean the enemy soldiers in this fantasy world that she gave the option of bending the knee and they said, no thanks, I'd rather die, and she acquiesced? Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't... This is Game of Thrones. Real world politics? Yeah, sure. No, don't do that. Game of Thrones? You gots to burn them with your dragon if you say, hey, I am being a reasonable ruler. I'm trying to overthrow your kingdom and take back what I believe is rightfully mine. I have done so with the entire rest of the 7 kingdoms, and now I've come to you. I have justly routed you. You have been soundly defeated, and you stand before me vanquished, and I will gladly welcome you into my kingdom as strong and brave men if you will bend the knee. If you shan't bend the knee, then you shall get burned. And they said, thank you very much for your offer. We would like to not bend the knee. Please hit us with your holy fire. And then she said, very well, Drogon, my beloved boy, please take your time. And then Drogon, the whole army. That's not crazy. That's not something a crazy person would do. That's something somebody in Game of Thrones does. That's something somebody in Game of Thrones does because that's the rules. They killed Ned Stark in the first season for being a just and noble man. She gave him a reasonable out. She gave him options, and they chose an option, and she followed through. And Tyrion was like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I can't believe you just burned all those men. You mean the ones she gave an out to? And they chose valor and courageously sticking to their morals rather than bend the knee? Sure, yeah. Okay. I don't know. The fact that people, even in the show, tried to have Tyrion be like, oh, that was too far. You're acting kind of crazy. When that, like, would anybody have been mad if would any of it, if it would have been one of the Starks? If it had been Jon Snow who called that call? No, because even Ned, oh my gosh, because even Ned taught his sons that if they were going to make a punishment, that they had to be the ones to follow it through. Dany laid out the punishment for them not being on her side, and then she followed through. It follows the logic of even the most just characters and noble characters in this franchise series full of bad people. Okay? So do not come at me and say that what she did in that battle, because I've had people mention that, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. You're wrong, and that's what you're saying is wrong, and it's not right, because that was just good war strategy in a fantasy land with dragons. Okay, so we move on from that. We do see Dany getting a little more upset as time goes on in season 8, particularly because she stops pursuing her ultimate goal of the Iron Throne to help Jon Snow defeat the White Walkers. She loses one of her children to the White Walkers, and she also loses her best friend to Cersei Lannister. And so the character that we have seen, her actions do not make sense for the character that they had built up. While she was always about taking over the throne and conquering the world, not a great goal, honestly, if we're being true to the world. That's why there's room for her to be Mad Queen Dany. While that was always there, she also always showed mercy and cared about the civilians. It's like she sits there and then all of a sudden she decides she's not going to go for the actual people she's mad at. She doesn't go against the soldiers, and she doesn't go for Cersei. It makes zero sense for the character of Daenerys, as she had been written up to that point, to go after the civilians, because the civilians were the people she always cared most about. That was her whole thing, was she was going to break the wheel and she was going to make the world better for those people. Do we think she's ever going to actually achieve that goal? No, because she ultimately is supposed to go mad with power according to the books, but like that is not what was told in the story. Here's what I'm losing it. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm losing it, and I can feel it. And I can feel it, and I can feel all of you losing it with me. And you're like, no, she's not making any sense. She's just repeating herself. You're absolutely right. I'm repeating myself. I can't think. Let's see. I'm listening to the speech in my own head and my heart. Hold on. Okay, yes. Here's what I want to say. The only argument people ever seem to make, or at least have made to me, or at least I've read in the comments, is that what she did to that group of soldiers was like the first sign of her madness, when it was exactly in line with what she did when she released the Unsullied. It was exactly in line with every other political or war maneuver that she'd made up until that point, and it was measured and calm and as just as everything else that she'd done. Okay, so I think we got to take that off the table. What I would have, and then it's just like she's still heroic. She gives up her own goals briefly so that she can help Jon Snow defeat the White Walkers. She helps save Westeros from the White Walkers. She gets no praise for that. She loses a child. She loses her best friend, and then she snaps and decides to destroy all of King's Landing. And the reason that felt so terrible is because there was no lead up to it. She was the same heroic, kind, charming Queen Dany that we'd known all the way up until the second she decides she's going to light up all of King's Landing for no reason at all. And so what would have been amazing if they would have had, if they would have just done their jobs and written it the way that they were supposed to, is they would have started planting seeds back in like season 6. If they had started planting those seeds back in season 6, like maybe if it's been so long since I've actually watched this show, because what happened was I watched it with everybody else. It pulled a How I Met Your Mother, but worse, because I've rewatched How I Met Your Mother, and I've never rewatched Game of Thrones, because what this did was it made me and my roommate and everybody who else had seen it talk about it for a solid month, and then it completely just fell off the face of the earth. Like I hit a wall a month after it had aired, and I was like, I can't talk about this show anymore. And I remember I was going to try and get my roommate a Christmas present, and I got her like some socks that said Queen of Dragons or whatever, and then I got to the checkout counter and I was like, no, it was like House Targaryen, and I got to the checkout counter and I was like, I can't buy these. And then she came home a couple days later and she had a Mother of Dragons shirt, and she's like, I bought this, I'm gonna return it because I just don't care anymore. And like with How I Met Your Mother, I think we all agree that the final 20-minute episode almost ruined the entire show. But How I Met Your Mother is such a strong show up until those last 20 minutes that you can rewatch it, even knowing what's gonna happen at the end is gonna happen. This puts such a sour taste in my mouth that every time I even think like, do I want to watch Game of Thrones again? The answer is a resounding no. I tried watching House of the Dragon because I was like, maybe I'll like it. I watched like half of the first episode and it just reminded me of how much I disliked what happened in Game of Thrones. Like it ruined the entire series for me forever. I haven't seen it in a long time and I can't remember some of the points in my I can't remember some of the points in my speech, unfortunately, because they were related to actual details of the show that I've purged from my memory at this point. But basically, I think season 5 is where the books ended, right? Like that was the last book that was written. So in season 6 and season 7, if they were leading to season 8 and they knew ahead of time that they wanted Mad Queen Dany, and I don't think they did, I think they just sort of scrambled at the end and tried and just like tacked it on there because they were like, I guess George wanted this. Oh no, and we had all this time and we didn't do anything. Make a clip show. Make a clip show of everybody telling her not to be like her dad. They should have started back in season 6. And in season 6, they should have started having her go from being someone who cared about the civilians to being a little bit colder towards them. Like a little bit more cruel, a little bit more harsh, and a little bit more about the throne. I'm pretty sure, isn't season 6 when, for the good of the people, she decided to lock her own children in a basement? She locked her own beautiful baby boys in a basement for those people. Her beautiful baby boys. She cared about the people. Anyway, so, and we should have seen her start getting a little bit crueler in her punishments. We should have seen her doing things a little hastily, a little impulsively, but we never did. Everything that she does always had a good and just reason. Oh, what about when she burned down the like Khalisee or whatever, the kings of all the calls in their city of kings, their big tent city with all the kings in it, and she burned it all down. Yeah, she burned it all down because they wanted to treat her like garbage, and she said, "I'm not garbage. I'm the mother of dragons, and fire cannot kill a dragon." And then she said, "See," and had like a rebirth, like akin to what she had in season 1. Okay, so it was like that justified. The scene with the soldiers justified. Her being upset about the two people she was her son and her best friend getting killed. Reasonable reason to be upset. Everything she did, she had like a justified reason to act the way she did, and she acted in a way that made sense. So we should have been seeing her act a little more rashly, a little more impulsively, a little more like, a little bit crazy, a little bit, what's that? The voices, oh my gosh. There was no signs of madness. She was the same Dany she'd always been. She was cast in that hero light that she always was, and they should have planted the seeds. They should have built up in tiny ways her madness, so that when we got to episode 8, it was this delicious, like, oh no, she is becoming like her father. We've been seeing it. She's been acting strangely. She's been doing weird things. That way, when we get to the final episode and they say previously on, we actually have clips of Daenerys Targaryen acting like an unjust and slightly mad ruler. Because if we recall what we've seen of her father, the king, he was just... Okay, let's wrap up. He was just burning people like crazy, and that's why Jaime Lannister had to kill him. And he was just like, burn them all! Burn them all! And that's not how she acted ever. And there had to be a ramp up, right? You don't start off bonkers. You don't just go bonkers one day. There's a build up. And there wasn't here. Anyway, I feel like that was not as founded or as well thought out as I had hoped it would be. It's been a while, actually, since I've brushed off the speech. And I often stop myself mid-speech because I'm like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. But that is my opinion. And I'm sure if anybody sees this video, there's going to be some people in the comments saying, "Oh, but what about X, Y, and Z? Oh, but what about A, B, and C? What about these scenes, Summer?" Well, you've watched the show more than I have, and it's been a long time, and all I know is what my heart tells me, and my heart tells me these things. 1, I love Daenerys. 1, I loved Daenerys Targaryen. She was the reason I started watching the show, and she was cast as a hero from beginning until her final scene. And then suddenly she was evil. Without warning. 2, I would have been totally okay with Mad Queen Dany if they'd have built... Ah! That was really scary. I didn't know QuickTime Player was chill like that. Anyway, my thoughts are as follows. I love Daenerys Targaryen, and she was the reason I started watching Game of Thrones. I really wanted her to win, and I'm bummed that she didn't, but it's okay. She probably wasn't going to from the first place, but I would have liked it if she did. 2. I would have been totally okay with Mad Queen Dany if they would have given us the time and the build-up for it, but they didn't, because they had plenty of time to show her being mad or cruel or crazy, but she remained the just and sane and sensible and clever ruler that she'd always been from the beginning, and it didn't change until the last second. 3. The thing that bugged me most about that was that they tried to convince us that they had led up to it by giving us a 5-minute clip show in the previously on where a bunch of characters who were not Daenerys Targaryen mentioned her crazy father and then said, "Don't be like him," and never showed a single clip of her acting like him in any way. 4. Those soldiers had a decision to make, and they made their decision, and she did what anybody in the Game of Thrones universe would have done. Okay, this is a land where we had the Red Wedding, and the best man amongst them died in season 1. Okay, like this, what she? Oh my gosh, there's something in my eye. Like, okay, and I just that argument always makes me upset, and that's why I keep talking about it for the rest of my life. Five, it hurt me worse than How I Met Your Mother season finale. And the How I Met Your Mother season finale, we all know, was universally disappointing. But I've rewatched How I Met Your Mother at least once, and I'm rewatching it again in small increments anytime I come home to visit my mom because she's never seen it, and I will never, ever watch Game of Thrones again, probably ever in my entire life. And I can't even bring myself to care about House of the Dragon despite the buzz and everybody saying that it's really good and it's its own thing and it's fine and it's great and it's really, really good. Can't bring myself to care because I don't trust anybody who has anything to do with Game of Thrones anymore. I don't trust it as an IP because all it ever did was hurt me. Do I have any other thoughts? 6. These are my thoughts and opinions, and you can't change them. They've been locked into my brain for a long time, and nothing you say about Daenerys Targaryen is ever going to make me think that they handled it well. The only thing that would have handled it well is if they would have started planting seeds in season 6, and they didn't. They didn't do it. They didn't start planting seeds in season 6, and she just never ever seemed crazy until right at the last second. And to the end of my life, I will say the thing that would have made most sense and which would have made it seem like she was acting crazy the way, there it is. The thing that would have made it seem like she was acting crazy in a way that actually made sense for her character is if she would have burned all of the soldiers without asking them if they wanted to bend the knee and just decimated all of the King's Landing soldiers and then went straight for Cersei and decimated Cersei. That would have made sense because then it would have been like, my lady, you never gave them an opportunity to surrender. You just went crazy and you burned in the show specifically, the character they had written for the show, she wouldn't have done that. And so it just didn't make sense. 8. What's an 8th thing that I want to say? Oh, the only thing I did like about the final episode was that shot of her walking into the courtyard and you see his big wings behind her. I thought that was neat. I don't think that it's worth what they did to her for it, but it was a cool shot. And finally, the thing that I actually really did love was the very last shot of her and Drogon. Is that the dragon's name? Do I remember that correctly? Like I said, it's been a long time and I just can't care about this show anymore because it broke my heart. Anyway, the biggest dragon, the one we all loved, our best boy, when he turned and he destroyed the Iron Throne because it was like he knew that that was the thing that really killed his mother. Loved that. And then I loved him gently picking her up and flying away with her. Beautiful moment. And I actually was like, man, love what I just saw. Too bad everything that led up to it was a horrible nonsense garbage fire that's going to reek in my nostrils for the rest of my days. And I think that's everything. I think that's all the thoughts that I have about that. And what to say, what final things to say. Oh, yes, I like to try and update you guys about how my book is going, because I'm trying to do this so that I can market my book successfully once I'm finished. Anyway, I'm halfway through chapter 10, and chapter 10's been giving me some trouble because there was a conversation that needed to be reworked, and there was this like cool real world invention that happened in the Regency era that actually fit really neatly into my story. And so I was like, I want to bring that in some way to add some like historical realism to this, you know, to this gothic horror novel that I'm writing. And so I was trying to work this in, and I was realizing that there was like I just kept coming up against this. There was like an aspect of it that I wanted to like highlight, but it wasn't working. So I had to come at that several different ways in order to finally figure it out. But I did, and now it caused me to actually rewrite a whole different section. But she, my main character, is on the verge of a very big discovery, and I'm very excited to write about that. So that's where we are in my book. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe if you want to keep watching more stuff like this. My apologies for this video, honestly. I'm, like I said, trying to put, thought, gosh, I need to do something that's trending, and I missed my opportunity to do anything related to Mad Max Fury Road because I just wasn't in the mood to watch the movie the weekend Furiosa came out. So instead, we're doing this, and it is what it is. So God bless you. God bless us, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. I'm gonna go eat dinner. Bye.